So let me go back to the year 2000, the year when the millennium changed, the first numeral in the year changed after 1000 years. Finally, we wrote 2000. And that opportunity comes to very few generations because you have to wait 1000 years for the number to change. So the number changed, and so did a lot of things for India. For all of you who belong to the previous era, you remember how you had to wait for 2 hours for a trunk call to be fulfilled by the telephone system. And you sit near the phone after you have booked a call. And if you want a lightning call, the earliest it will come would be about 10 or 15 minutes. And a normal call would typically take 2 or 3 hours. So the telephone system was moving from the phone call to the cell phone. Postcards, how many remember postcards? Today they have become extinct. The modern generation can't even imagine what it is to write all your communication message in that small 4 by 6 inch size. We are so used to either writing cryptic messages using the shorthand on iPhones or elaborate messages on your emails. But that was an art which is lost. But the postcards were giving way to the emails. Your Limcas and thumbs ups and gold spots were giving way to the Pepsis and Coca-Colas. The Fiats and Ambassadors were the only cars we saw on the roads for long decades. In fact, you have to wait for 10 years to get an Ambassador car. And even with premium, you won't get the car faster than 2 years. The Fiats and Ambassadors were giving way to the Toyotas and the Hondas. There was a very palpable change. The life had changed. The DD and DD Metro was a story of the past. I still remember there was a time when I was in primary school. We had TV only between 7 and 9. From 6 to 7, half an hour was meant to be information for the agricultural class in Marathi language, since I hail from Bombay. And the second half of that was lost and found stories. In Marathi, they used to say, "Apan yanna pahilat ka?" Did you see this person? And then they'll put a black and white photo and describe him. That was the kind of use mainstream channels like Doordarshan were used for. 7 to 9 was the only time when we had access to TV. In that, only Thursdays and Sundays you had Chaya Geet or Chitrahar, which is songs from the films, right? And only on Sunday in the afternoon you have that long awaited movie. But that movie couldn't be a mainstream movie. By and large, it was an art film which showed the problems of the socialistic society, the empowerment of the poor, or the problems faced by India over several decades. That was the kind of era which most of us have grown up with, especially the elders. And from there we came into an era after the Gulf War where we had 24 by 7 cable channels. And entertainment was bombarded right into your face. Philip's Top 10 became the point of conversation in schools during the break. Which was the song which was number 1 last week? Is it the same this week as well? You see how the changing economics of society changes the way of life each one of us leads. And that changes the priorities and preferences that each one of us have, and how our goals and aspirations change. Just then I had entered college and a student of commerce and economics. But what fascinated me was to study the evolution of the economic system in India. We had 2 streams of thoughts. The stream that was propounded by Mahatma Gandhi, which was the Sarvodaya system. The well-being of the last man in the line and the empowerment of the rural ecosystem and the economic system was his vision. Until the tear from the last man on the street in the last line is wiped away, our job is not done. On the other hand was the Nehruvian socialism, which was inspired by Russia, and the entire objective was to have state control of the economic development. You have the government being the Mai Baap or the guardian angel of the Indian economy, and everything that is done in the economy will be decided by the government. Public sector would be center stage, and the whole objective of this society was to focus on empowering the masses with jobs and equality. But this took violent turns because what was meant to be empowering the society started terrorizing the society. Nationalization of banks, The license Raj, which made even 1 or 2% of control of economic system as monopoly, and hence nobody could even aspire to expand their business without the government's permission. You would be surprised to know that it took 50 years for Tata Steel to get expansion permission from the government of India. From 1 lakh tons to 5 lakh tons. It took them 50 years to get their permission. In the same time period, Japan, which was a victim of World War II, grew 100 times. So you see, the inherent capacity of the nation was affected severely. But what was the biggest challenge was the tax system. Between 61 and 71, the Indian tax system increased from 70% taxation to 97.5% taxation. For those belonging to this era who are used to all the conversations that happen on social media about the pros and cons of GST and demonetization, should know about the tax terrorism that India had faced for almost 2 decades, where in early 70s we had 97.5% as the highest tax slab. Mr. P.N. Shah, who was a former president of the ICAI, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, is my grand uncle. So I checked with him and he said, yes, that's right. And when you add wealth tax to that, the taxation went up to 105%. So for every 100 rupees you earn, you have to pay 105 rupees to the government. And then the government expects us to be ethical in doing business. So I work hard, earn 100 rupees, and then I give that 100 to the government and take 5 rupees more from my savings of some other kind and give it to the government and say I'm an honest tax citizen. In the Mahabharata, when Vidura was giving advice to Yudhishthira, he had said this very, very distinctly, that the tax system that a king imposes shouldn't be such that it forces the citizenry to become prey to falsehood. So the tax system in India was primarily responsible for the commencement of what is today celebratedly called the black economy. Obviously, black economy would be coming into mainstream because who is going to pay 105 rupees tax when you are earning 100? You need to be highly spiritually evolved to feel that I am responsible for the country's growth, and hence I will sacrifice all my earnings plus add 5 rupees from my savings to be a legal tax-paying citizen. I am not promoting tax evasion on a study circle meant to be talking about ethics, but I am looking at a common man's psyche as to why ethics was a word most laughed at in that scenario. And that's why I want to provide a historical perspective to this. In the 45th year of independence, finally, bankruptcy forced the government of India to realize that this way of economic development is not going to work. The Soviet Union, from which India was inspired, itself collapsed. There was no USSR, and so there was nothing we were looking up to as our model of growth and development. And we got what was called economic liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So what is required in essence for success of a corporation or an economy? We need 3 things. We need a liberal system where corporations are given the freedom to grow. We need a transparent tax system where we are having all the resources which are earned in the right way taxed and plowed back into the ecosystem. And we have a thriving entrepreneurial mindset which continues to give us inspiration to be risk-taking and enterprising.